Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to show you something different from what we've been doing recently in the channel. So we've been building WinForms applications, which is not really C++. So it's just C++ CLI, an interface to use the .NET framework to create WinForms applications using C++. So today we are going to use a different technology called C++ WinRT, a language projection to be specific. This is a somewhat new technology. It is just a language projection for the Windows runtime. You can find all of the details through the links in the description. And it's basically standard C++ with a header only library. So you can just import those things to your application and use Windows runtime C++ WinRT in your applications. So I'm not going to talk about C++ WinRT, but we are going to create a simple calculator with modern UI controls like modern buttons and have that Windows 10 native look and feel. Actually Windows 11, because I'm going to use the Windows 11 app SDK, not the Windows 10 one, because that's much better than the Windows 10 one, and you can run Windows 11 apps inside Windows 10 as well, so that's not a problem. So I will put links for these articles where you can go through them and install this yourself if you want that kind of thing. But I'm going to show how to install the stuff you need to create this application in this video as well. So first we need to install Visual Studio. So for that you can go to visualstudio.com, which will then redirect to visualstudio.microsoft.com. And from here you can download Visual Studio Community 2022, which is free. Then after downloading that you will get a small installer, and then you can install Visual Studio Installer. And then the Visual Studio Installer should launch. So I already have Visual Studio installed and I already have a lot of stuff installed, so I cannot uninstall all of them and show you the installation process from the beginning. So I'm just going to show you the things you need to install, and hopefully it won't be a problem for you to just look at this and install it yourself. So the things you need: Universal Windows Platform Development. We are not going to create UWP apps, so that's a good thing. We are going to create desktop applications, but we still need Universal Windows Platform Development workload to be installed. And then we need .NET Desktop Development, and then we need Desktop Development with C++. And those are the three things we need to install. And then under the installation details, you need to check and make sure that the following things are selected. So under Universal Windows Platform Development, make sure the latest version of C++ Universal Windows Platform Tools is installed. So right now it is version 143. And then you can select Windows 11 SDK. If you want, you can select Windows 10 SDK, but I have Windows 11 SDK installed because I'm targeting Windows 11 and those controls are also better than the ones we have in Windows 10, so that's useful. And then you need to install Windows App SDK Visual Studio 2022 templates. So to do that, you can go to individual components and search for Windows App SDK. And from here you can select Windows App SDK C++ Visual Studio 2022 templates. And also you should see C++ WinRT selected. If not, you can search for WinRT and install that as well. So that's all you need to install. So after those have been selected, you can select install while downloading or download all, then install whatever that suits your situation, and then install. So in my case I have all of them installed. So you just have to go ahead and install those stuff, and then we can launch Visual Studio. And I'm just gonna close this one, and from here you can create a new project, and under the templates you can search for WinUI, and this will give some stuff for you to select. So we are going to select blank app packaged WinUI 3 in desktop. This is a desktop app, not a UWP app, so you have access to the file system and that stuff. But in UWP it's a little bit restricted and the app is kind of sandboxed, but in this case it is not. So you can select the blank app packaged WinUI 3 in desktop and click next, and then you can give a name for your application. So I'm just gonna name it as WinUI Calculator like that, and choose a location and then click create. Now the project should be created. And the first thing we need to do is go to the Solution Explorer and right click on our project called WinUI Calculator Desktop and go to its properties and change the platform toolset to Visual Studio 2022. This is because it is just not updated yet. Even though Microsoft has released Visual Studio 2022, they have not updated the templates, so they use Visual Studio 2019 toolset, which is version 142. So we need to change that to the one we have, which is 143 as we installed earlier. So after changing that, you can click OK. And now you can click on this local machine button and your application will be compiled and it will be run on your computer. And let's see whether it works. This will take some time because there's a lot of header files to be compiled, but those will be pre-compiled headers after you build the project first time, so you don't have to compile them again and again when you run your application. So you just have to do that once and you should be good to go. So the first time it's gonna take some time. And as you can see, our application has been launched. So we have this default application or the application provided by our template where we can click on this button and it will change to clicked. So we are going to improve this application to a simple calculator. We are not going to code a lot, but I'm just going to show you how to get started with this WinRT or C++ WinRT technology. So let's just close this one right now and go to Solution Explorer. And what we're looking for is this main window.saml file. As you can see, our file has been opened. Now, earlier in this channel, when we used WinForms, you saw a visual designer, but we don't have that for this technology as of now. But it will be available sometime, but for now, we only have this SAML file where we can define the UI using code. We don't have the visual designer, but that's fine because it is not that hard to get started with this format. So if you have developed applications using WPF and C#, you might have seen something like this. This is just like that. We are using SAML to build the UI. And then we have elements like stack panel to create the layout of our applications. So we have grids and stuff like that. And then we have elements like buttons, text blocks, and text boxes to create the content of our application. Now the UI of our application is handled through this SAML file, but the code that is responsible for the functionality, like as you saw when we click on this button, its text changed from click me to clicked. That is inside our main window.saml.cpp file right here. So as you can see, we have an event handler for that. Now you don't have to worry about any of these, but they are very easy to understand. This is just standard C++ code, nothing fancy. You can read through that and understand it yourself. So these are the files that we will be working, and this one we will use for creating our user interface, and this one we will use as the code behind or the place where we implement our functions. Now as you can see, we already have something called a window. This is our window, which is the main window that our application has. And then we have a bunch of SAML stuff like that. And then we have our elements. So the window can contain one element, which is going to be a container like stack panel, which we can use to lay out our application. So this is very simple. So I will show you how to write this by scratch. So I will just remove this part and I will show you that it is very easy to create something like that. So we just type this symbol, essentially it's a less than symbol, and then you can type stack panel and then hit enter, and then you can type the attributes you want. This is just like HTML. So we are going to add a stack panel. Okay, so what are the attributes we need? So earlier, if you saw that, by default we had the orientation as horizontal, but now I'm going to use it as vertical. What this does is, when we add other elements like this button inside the stack panel, those elements are going to be laid out according to this orientation. So in this case, the orientation is horizontal, so the elements will lie next to each other. So what I need is, I want the elements laid on top of each other. So I will just remove this stuff and let's type stack panel, and I need the orientation to be vertical. So as you can see, there's a very little to be typed and IntelliSense will guide you through the process. And then I need two other attributes. So I'm going to set the horizontal alignment to center so that the elements inside my stack panel will be centered in the form whenever the form is resized. And in WinForms, if you don't apply correct anchoring and docking, the elements will be on the top left corner and not in the center. But in this case, we have the option to put all of our elements in the center of our application if we want. Now next I'm going to set the vertical alignment to center as well, so that our elements are aligned center horizontally and vertically. And then I will just add this other symbol, and as you can see, the code has been completed for me with a closing tag for stack panel. And then I will hit enter. And now in here I will create my elements. So the first thing is going to be a text block, not a text box, a text block. This is essentially a label from our WinForms. So we are going to type text block, and then we are going to set some attributes for this one as well. So the first one is going to be the text inside of it. So we are going to type text, and then I'm going to add some text. So I'm going to type first number like that, and then we can type this slash, and then as you can see we have this syntax. So we can have an opening tag like this and then a closing tag like this, because we have other elements inside of this stack panel. But in text blocks we don't need any other elements. All we need is the text block opening tag, and then we need the text that goes in there and other attributes. So we can just use this syntax, and this is called a self-closing tag. So that's how you define a label or a text block. And then I'm going to define a text box for our application to enter the first number to use for calculation. So I'm going to type text box. Now text box is also a self-closing tag, so we can just type like that. And then we need another text block. So I'm going to copy both of these and paste it right here. So we have our first number label, and then we have our text box, and then we have our second number label, and then our text box. And then we can have a button to submit our two numbers into our application. So I will type button. So for this also we need some text, otherwise the user won't know what this button does. So let's try typing text. So as you can see, we don't have text in our IntelliSense. This is because a button can not only just contain text, but it can contain other stuff as well. So because of that, so the attribute is called content. So for text box we have text equals first number, but for buttons we have content equals the text inside the button. So we are going to code the addition for our calculator. So I'm going to add the text as add, and this can also be a self-closing tag. So I'm just going to do this. And now we need another label to display the result of our calculation. So I will place another text block, and the text is going to be result like that. And now let's run our application and see how it looks before coding any further. So as you can see, we got some errors, actually one error. So this is saying that my button identifier not found. This is because, if you can remember, we removed some code from the SAML file, but there was some code in our CPP file associated with that code in the SAML file. So because we deleted the code from our SAML file and there's some residue in our CPP file, we have to remove those as well. So let's just double click on this guy and go to this CPP file, and we can remove this function entirely. So I will just remove that. So now our application should work without any problems. So let's run our application and see how it looks. Now we have our application, and this is the UI that we created. So as you can see, it is actually already looking better. So we have our label, and then a text box, and then label, a text box, and our button which does nothing right now, and then our result. So we can improve this. As you can see, all of these are like very close to each other, and it is very hard to look at them and navigate through the user interface. This is not good for the end user. We need it to be very simple and easy to grasp. So what we can do is we can add some space around these elements. So to do that, we can use an attribute called margin. So it will just add the space we specify around these labels. So to do that, we can go to our SAML file. But before that, I'm going to show you something else. So we don't need to close our application. In this case, we have something called hot reload. This is something that comes with Visual Studio 2022. So we can use that feature to make changes to our code in our SAML file, and then those changes should reflect in our application. So to make this process a lot easier, we have this SAML live preview tab in our Visual Studio itself. So what we can do is, I'm just going to resize this one a little bit like that. So as you can see, this is just like a screen recording of this window. So what I can do is go here and set the zoom level to about 100 so we can see everything better like that. And now we can look at that and make changes to our code. So we are going back to our SAML file, and under stack panel we have these elements. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to add a margin. So this is going to be an attribute. So let's type margin like that, and then in here we can type the space we want. So I want 10 pixels around each element. So I will type 10. Now as you can see, our UI has been updated, and the first number text is a little bit away from this text box, but in here the second number is right next to it. So as you can see, the margin has been applied. So I'm going to add this piece of code to all of these other elements, just like that. Now as you can see, our UI is much easier to navigate, but I'm going to fine tune this a little bit more. Now I want all of these elements to be centered in my stack panel. Although they are centered in the form, they are not centered in their borders. So as you can see, our text box is right here and the label is on the left side of the text box. So it's like left aligned. So what I want to do is, I want to align all of these to the center. So to do that, I can go here and type horizontal alignment and set that to center. And as you can see, the text has been pushed a little bit like that. And then I can copy this part and paste it in all of these text box and buttons, but I don't have to do that. I can just copy this one, and then I will add some tabs to these, and you will see why in a moment. So I just want to get my cursor to the same place. So I have these aligned like that, and now what I can do is, I can hold Alt and then I can click and drag my cursor like that, and then I have this multi-cursor editing. Now I can paste that piece of code like that, and as you can see, all of my elements have been aligned center. Now I need another thing to occur, which is, I need my text box to be larger. I want its width to be higher than this. So what I can do is, I can add an attribute called width, and I can set this to be something like 200. And now as you can see, the text box is a lot larger. And also I can do something like 150, and that seems okay for me. So I'm just gonna go with that, and I will copy this part and paste it here as well. And now our UI is looking better and it is easier to navigate through the UI. But I'm going to fine tune some other stuff as well. So if you can remember, we have this margin thing. So I'm going to edit this a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is, for these text blocks, which are these labels, I'm going to set the bottom margin to 0. So the text box and the label are together. So to do that, we can add 4 numbers for this margin property. So I'm going to type 0, 0, 0, 0. So what this does is, we are able to define the margin of this element for each side. So this is going to be left, then up, and then right, and then down or bottom. So for the first one, we don't need any top margin, but I'm going to set it anyway. So I'm going to put it to 10, and I'm going to copy this and paste it for my other text block as well, like that. And now you can see that the first number label and the text box is together, and the second number and the label is together. So that's what we need. And for the add button here, I will change its margin as well. I'm going to increase its margin to something like 20, so it is further away from this text box. And for the text block right here, which says result, I want to change its font size, so I want to make it bigger. So what I can do is I can use the font size property, and I can set the number of pixels or the size of the label manually. So I can put something like 24, and as you can see, our result text is larger because we need it to be larger so that the user is able to see the result very easily. Now, as you can see, our application has also been updated, and now we are going to add some code for this application. So what I'm going to do is I will go to this button element, and here I will add something called an event handler. So you should be familiar with this if you are already a viewer of this channel, and this is just the same thing we see in WinForms. We are going to add an event for this button so that when the user clicks on the button, something happens. So for that, we can type click, and as you can see, we have this lightning bolt icon which says it's an event handler, and you can hit enter, and then here you can click on new event handler and press enter. Now this will create an event handler for your button. You can right click on this guy and go to definition, and then you should be able to write your code in here. Now this is the event handler for your button. Here what I want to do is I want to grab the text from this text box and the text from this other text box and convert them to integers, because obviously those are text, those are strings, and we need to convert them to integers or doubles, something like that. And then I will add those and I will put that into this label. So to do that, I want to access the property text in this text box. So how do I do that? How can I identify this text box in my code? There is no way. So for that, what I can do is I can give a name for my text box. So to do that, I can go ahead and type x:\name. Now this is because this is a SAML namespace, so we have x:. So in the namespace of x, we have this property called name, and then we can add the name for our text box. So I'm going to set this to text first, like that, and I'm going to copy that, and for the next text box also I'm going to put that right there, and I'm going to change this to text second. So that should be fairly simple. So I named my first text box as txt first and the next one as txt second. And finally, when we add those two numbers, we need to append the result to this label. So for that also we need another name. So for the text block, we can add a name as well, like that. So I'm going to name that as LBL result. Now let's go back to our event handler, and in here we can type the code that we need to occur. So first I'm going to get the text from our text boxes. So I will type txt first, and as you can see, this is a method, so we need to put the parentheses, and then we can use the dot operator and then call text, and this is also a method. So in this case, we are not going to pass any text or assign any text to these labels. We are just going to get the text from those labels, or actually text boxes. And I will do the same thing for my other text box as well. Now this is going to be txt second. I have the text. Now what do I do with those? So I can store them in a variable. So to do that, I'm going to make an integer outside of this function. Actually, I will put it inside here, and also it is better to just move this event handler into this scope, so I will do that as well. So all I have to do is just remove this part, and then I can cut this function and put it here, just like that. And now we have our function inside our namespace, and now I can create an integer just like how you would do in standard C++. So this is going to be my first num, and then I have second num, and then I will have a result as well. Okay, now I'm going to convert this text to an integer. So to do that, we can first convert this to a standard string in C++. So this is of type hstring, which comes with this WinRT library. So when we get the text from this text, first it returns an hstring. So we need to convert that to a standard string. So to do that, we can type toString, and this is a function provided by the WinRT library, and then we can just pass this guy like that. And I'm going to stop our application. So now we are going to use this function again for this guy as well. So I will do that right here as well, like that. Okay, now we have two strings. Now I'm going to use another function to convert these strings to integers. So this is something provided by the standard library. So I'm going to type s2i. So this means string to integer. So this will convert a string to an integer. And now I want to assign this to my first num variable. So I will type first num like that. Now I will do the same thing for this guy as well. So we will type second num is equals s2i, and here we can assign that to our second num as well. Now we need to set the result to the addition of these two numbers. So I will set result equals first num plus second num. So it's just standard C++ stuff, nothing fancy. So that's why I am showing this, because I just want to stress the point that this is standard C++, not something like C++ CLI that we used in WinForms. So now we can convert this result to a string. So specifically what we need to do is convert this to an hstring, because that's what the text boxes and labels use. So what I'm going to do is I will type lbl result, and then I will type text, and in here I will pass my result variable. So when I pass my result variable, it won't work because this is an integer, and we are going to pass that integer to this function which expects an hstring. So we need to convert this to an hstring. So to do that, we have a function called toHstring, just like toString provided by the WinRT library, and we can use this function to convert this integer to an hstring and then pass it to the text property of our label. So now let's run our application and see whether it works. And now we can type something like 24, 5, and the result should be 29. Also the text called result has been disappeared, so we need to add that as well. So I will just close this and add that right here. So just like in standard C++, you can type something like this and append it like this, because both of these are strings. But we get an error on this operator because this is a string and this is an hstring. So to make this a wide string or an hstring, so we can put a capital L right here before this quotation mark. So now the code should work. So we can run our application, and now we can pass something like 24 and 6, and the answer should be 30, and we get it right here like that. Now next we can improve this application by adding another 3 buttons for subtraction, division and multiplication. So let's go ahead and create those 3 buttons. So if I create the buttons after this line, so for instance, let's say we copied this guy and pasted like this. 4 buttons is what we need, and the problem is these 4 buttons are going to laid on top of each other. Now as you can see, the 4 buttons have been laid out like this. Now this is not what we want. We need them to be on the same row. So to do that, we can use another stack panel. So in that case, the orientation is going to be horizontal. So just like we added buttons, we can add another stack panel inside of this stack panel. So I'm going to just copy this guy because I'm lazy and that's what we need. And okay, and just like that, we have our other stack panel. Now I'm going to change the orientation to horizontal, and I'm going to put these buttons inside here. Now we have our stack panel and we have our 4 buttons. Now we need to change some stuff, so I will change this to subtract, or we can just use plus signs like this and a minus sign for this and X mark for this for multiplication, and then a slash for division. And now let's see how our application looks like when we run it. Of course, you need to clean up your code. This just looks like a mess. You have to put nice spacing and make your elements easily readable, but that's not the point of this video, so you can just do that by yourself. I'm not going to do that because I'm lazy. And now, as you can see, our buttons have been laid out horizontally. Now, as you can see, there are some unwanted margins around our buttons. So what I'm going to do is set the left and right margin to something like 2.5 pixels, and then the top and bottom margin to something like 10 or 20 like we added here. So the top and bottom is going to be 20 and the left and right is going to be something like 2.5. So to do that, we can either specify all 4 values or we can just specify 2 values. So in this case, I'm going to type 2.5 comma 20. So this is going to assign 2.5 to both left and right margin and 24 top and bottom margin. So this is a short way to write that without writing all of these 4 digits. Now I can copy this guy and I will add multi-cursors for these 3 lines and I will paste that. And now let's run our application and it should look better. And as you can see, the buttons have been laid out perfectly. Now we can close our window. Now what I'm going to do is I will go back to my C++ file and I'm going to break some pieces of this code into functions, because I'm going to have to use this stuff again and again. So I will add a function called void main window, and this is going to be conversions, because I'm going to use this function to convert my numbers into, or my strings into numbers. So I will cut this part and paste it right here like that. And since we are adding this here, we need to provide a declaration for that in our header file. So we can just click here and create declaration for conversions in main window saml.h file. So then all the errors should be gone. We can close that and we can save everything. Okay, now I'm going to take this guy and put it into its own function as well. So I will type void main window and this is going to be output. It's just one line, but it makes sense to write it like that. So I will add the declaration for this guy as well. Just click on the screwdriver and click create declaration and save and close. Okay, so now in our function, all we have to do is type conversions and this will do the conversions and then we can output. So it's very simple this way. Now all we have to do is copy this part and create different event handlers for our buttons and change the plus to minus and so on. So let's go to our main window.saml. So as you can see, currently all these 3 buttons have the same event handler. So I'm going to delete those event handlers. So I can hold Alt and select them and I can type backspace, and for this one I will create a new event handler. Okay, I'm going to set the name as subtract and save this one, and this one is going to be multiply and this one is going to be divide. And now let's go back to our CPP file and then I can copy this code and create my event handlers, because I didn't create the event handler from my IntelliSense automatically, so I have to create the event handlers myself. And I'm going to name this one as subtract and I'm going to get an error, so we can as usual create a declaration like that and save, close. And I'm going to do the same thing for the other two buttons as well, and this one is going to be multiply and this one is going to be divide, and I will create declarations as well, and I can save everything. And now I need to change this stuff, so this one is addition, that's fine, and this one is subtract, this one is multiply, and this one is divide. Okay, so let's see whether our application works. Now let's try this out. So I can type 12, and for the second number I can put 4, and if we add we get 16, if we reduce we get 8, multiply 48 and divide 3. So our application works fine. So one other thing is I used integers, so I should have used doubles to work with floating point numbers, but you can implement that on your own. And this is just some introduction to get started with WinUI and C++ WinRT. Now to export this app, it is going to be a little bit harder than you think. So when we are creating WinForm applications, we can just grab the DLL files and grab the exe and put them inside a setup created using a third-party application like Advanced Installer, or we can just use something like 7-zip and NSIS as I showed in another video. But in this case we cannot do that, it's a little bit complicated. So to export our application, we can double click on this package.apex manifest, and this will provide us an interface to package our application. So here we have our display name and description set already, that's fine. Let's go to visual assets, and here we can add our own image. So I will add a source as I will use this image from my pictures folder. So you can select whatever you want by going here and browsing to your location, and then you can click generate to generate the assets again, and it will generate different sizes of your provided asset, and it should take some time, but it will create eventually. And now we have all of these assets, and these will be used for the icons and stuff like that. So let's go to packaging, we don't need to care about these three, and then you can select choose certificate, and now we need to create a certificate. Now I'm going to name this as testing certificate, something like that, okay, and we can add a password. Now I can type just something like 123 and then click OK, and then as you can see the details are right here, and then we can click OK. Now that certificate has been selected, and now let's go to our solution explorer, and we can right click on our project, and actually first we will build the whole solution. So I will change the configuration to release, and then I will go to build and build solution. Now it will take some time just like previously, because it has to compile all of those header files again, because now we are using a different configuration. And after that you will get this build succeeded. Now after that you can right click on your project and then go to package and publish, and then click create app packages. And now you can select side loading, which is already selected. If you are publishing to the Microsoft Store, you need a developer account. So for now we are going to side load it. So what we are going to do is generate an MSIX bundle application, and then we are going to use it to install our app on our PC. So now we can disable automatic updates because we don't have an update server, but if you have that, but as a beginner you won't, but when you grow you will have, then you can select that and then click next, and then our certificate should be selected here, and then we can click next. And then here, just for clarity, I'm just going to leave 64, and for our output location this is fine, and for generate app bundle we need to select always, and then I will click create, and then this will also take some time to create our package. You just have to wait patiently, and after the build is succeeded we will be presented with this finished creating package dialog, and from here you can open the location where the files are located, and I can just close this guy. And now here we can go into this folder, and then we have a few files. Now what we are interested is this MSIX file and .sir file. Actually, it's an MSIX file, not MSIX bundle. So as you can see, it's a Windows 10 application package. Now we can double click on it to install it, but it says that the app is not signed with the trusted certification. So it's an untrusted app. So we need to install this certificate on our machine. So we can open that and click install certificate, and then click local machine and click next, and then it will ask for administrative privileges, and then place all certificates in the following store, browse and select trusted root certification authorities. Okay, next, finish, and the import should be successful. And now let's open the certificate again, and it says it's fine to use. Now we can open our MSIX, and now it says that it is a trusted app because the publisher is trusted because we installed the certificate ourselves. But when you are downloading it from the store, you won't have any of this hassle because then you will be a trusted publisher. Now we can install, and this will install our application, and the application should launch right away like that. Now we can enter something like this and like that, and our application should work. So it works, right? It works. Yeah, it works. And let's close this guy for now, and let's go ahead and look at these other folders as well. And we have this dependencies folder, and this is where you can find the dependencies for your application. You can use these installers to install the dependencies, or if you are publishing this application through store, the dependencies will be installed automatically. And also if the user is connected to the internet and the user launches the MSIX application, then the dependencies should be installed automatically via the internet as well. So these two are the things that you need to deploy with your application. Also, there's a way you can place this certificate in your trusted root authorities certificate section via the PowerShell. So I'm not sure how to do that, but you can search for that in Google and find it out. And then you don't have to go through that process. You can just double click on the PowerShell, or you can install the PowerShell script, and this should be located in your system, and then the MSIX should install without any problem. All of this is because you are not a trusted publisher. Now if you create the developer account and do the payment and become a trusted publisher and get a trusted certificate, then it's going to be fine. You don't have to install any certificates, and you will be a trusted developer. So that's it for this video. We downloaded and installed Visual Studio and the correct workloads, and actually we didn't install in my computer because I had it already, but I showed you everything you need to install. And then we created a project, and then we created a simple calculator app, which is very simple. It can just add, subtract, multiply and divide, but the point was to show you how to get started with the project. You can add buttons and stuff like that, and all of that looked native. And then we created a package, an MSIX package, to install our application, and we generated this certificate file, and then we installed that on our machine, and we have that on our start menu called WinUI calculator. And now we can launch that as well. So as you can see, we have this first number failed, second number failed, and then we can add. And also something bad just happened because there was nothing in our text boxes, and when I clicked the add button, it tried to add those null values and it just gave off an exception, and that's why our application crashed. So you can use exception handling or if conditions to check whether the text boxes are empty and show a message like this. So I will show what I'm talking about. So this is what I created on my own before creating this video. So if we type something like this, it works. And also we have decimal numbers because I used doubles. And if I remove this and click on the plus icon, it says please enter something. So that's not related to WinRT, but I just wanted to show you that an exception is thrown when you are not adding any text into the text box. So that's it for this video. Hope you guys learned something new. Now you can create modern native Windows 10 or Windows 11 applications with C++, and it is standard C++ with the header only library WinRT. And C++ WinRT is just a language projection for the Windows runtime. You can read more about that through the links in the description. And this way you can build desktop applications, not UWP. You don't have those restrictions. Your application is not sandboxed, and you don't have to worry about creating modern user interfaces yourself, because you can create all of that very easily using SAML inside here. So we will continue creating WinForms applications, but I think this will be the next step you can put in your C++ GUI development career. So I'm saying this for the third time in this video. That's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys learned something new. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one with some amazing content. Bye for now.